think you understand just how excited I am for this video. Okay, maybe you do. You did click on this video after all. You must love spooky season 2. And I'm assuming you also like books, so you are in great company here. Welcome to my channel. My name is Lauren and I create horror and Halloween content all year long. If that's your jam, definitely subscribe because we are heading into the best time of the year and I have a whole lot of fun plans in the making. This is my reading list, a pile of possibilities, if you will, that has been in the making for many months. I read horror all year long. It's the genre I read the most. But I try never to read a book that explicitly mentions or utilizes the setting of Halloween. And I do that because I find that, the less you experience something, the more joyful and enjoyable it ends up being. So I try to keep the Halloween vibes to a minimum during the year and then really turn up the volume on them when we get to September and October. My Halloween TBR can be categorized into two groups: cozy and creepy. I'm defining cozy as any book that gives Halloween vibes, but has a little to no gore or the typical horror elements. Maybe it falls within the horror genre because lighter or cozy horror does exist, but it's likely going to be a mystery, a romance, possibly a thriller that has supernatural or paranormal elements thrown in. Or it's a book that is just simply set within fall. My creepy books are those that fall within the horror genre. There's possession stories, creature features, haunted houses, slashers, just all the best ingredients that make up a Halloween book. Let's start off with the cozy books that I plan on reading this fall. The first book on my list is The Halloween Moon by Joseph Fink. The first thing that stood out to me about this book is the cover. It is gorgeous, and it definitely really hits on those cozy, warm vibes when I think of fall in my head. I think this has paranormal aspects. I don't see too many people talk about this book, but when I read the plot summary, even though I totally forgot it, I knew that there were elements in there that I was likely to really love. The next book is Pumpkinheads by Faith Erin Hicks. This is actually a graphic novel, which I don't read too many of them, but I did first hear about it when I was looking through some Summerween readathon videos. There are a lot of people who were reading these and they said it was the perfect book for fall. I think maybe there's some romance in it, and it has to do with maybe people who work on a pumpkin patch, and it might even be YA, but don't quote me on that. I love YA, so that's not a big deal to me. The next book is Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by Shay Earnshaw. I want to say this book came out in the last few years, maybe even last year. I have heard some critiques about this book. It is a little bit mixed, and I think the biggest critique is that it maybe doesn't encapsulate the character of Sally as much as you would want it to based off of the Nightmare Before Christmas movie. But other people like Mandy Spooks, they love this book and they've been super encouraging about me getting to it, and so this one's gonna be high on my list. Next is a graphic novel, Sheets, which is written by Brenna Thumler. I think this book has a little bit of humorousness to it. It doesn't take itself too seriously. I think it's supposed to be really sweet and thoughtful about this idea of friendship and maybe loneliness. I think those themes show up in this book. Okay, I know this next one probably doesn't seem like it'd fall within the cozy category because it is a slasher, but I don't know what it is about this book that just makes me feel so warm and comforted, and it makes no sense because it is a slasher. I'm talking about Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. And I loved reading this last Halloween for the first time, so I'm thinking maybe making it a tradition as I move forward. And I'm looking forward to maybe this Halloween, maybe the next, getting back into the sequel for this one too, which I have already read. And I do also know that there is a third book that is going to be making its way out on shelves. I don't know when, but very soon. It's already through development. And it's just the corn stalks, and I don't even know if it actually happens during Halloween. It actually might even be set within summer, but it just reads cozy to me. I don't know, you tell me. Do you also agree if you've read this book? Or maybe just let me know that I'm crazy. The next book is Halloween Party by Agatha Christie, which will actually be my first Christie book ever. And the reason why I'm reading this book is because I believe it's based off of the newest film adaptation of her works. I did a video very recently about the upcoming movies releasing before Halloween this year. So if you want to know more about this movie, I do talk about it there. So I'll link that down below in the description. I like the premise, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to finally get to a Christie book. I've heard from some folks that she might have a little bit of problematic writing in there, which is never something I enjoy experiencing as I'm reading in my free time. So we'll see how this one goes. Next is What Stays Buried by Suzanne Young. I want to say this one is juvenile fiction, maybe a middle grade. It looks very spooky, but kind of maybe wholesome. And I have read Suzanne Young's works. In Nightfall is one book I read earlier this summer that I loved. It is all about the Lost Boys vibes. And I liked the writing. I thought it was pretty decent for YA, which is always always something that is like tough for me to enjoy the writing style for. Because I've read her works and I do know that I like her writing style, I think that this would be a hit for me. And I'm a huge proponent for adults reading middle grade. They're just so wholesome, so sweet, and really gets you into the atmosphere, because I don't know what it is about middle grade or like YA books, but they just have this potential to be like cozy in ways that I don't think a lot of like adult geared books really do for me. Next is actually a thriller, Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. Again, the first time I'm reading anything from this author. I think the only thing that screams like Halloween to me is what I'm gathering from people saying that there's like kind of coastal, like dark coastal gothic vibes in this thriller, and also there's like a day or two where it is set in Halloween. I'm curious to find my thoughts on this book because I know it's not necessarily the most beloved book, but people have read this quite a bit. Like, it definitely has made its rounds on BookTube. The next book is The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. Is this one a classic? I don't know. I feel like it is. I also know that this book is inspiration to Walt Disney, or maybe just like the Disneyland park engineers, where they have something, I forget what it is, but there's a part of the park that is dedicated to or like uses elements of Ray Bradbury's Halloween Tree story. So maybe if I read it, I get some information, some background, I'll be able to pick that out whenever I go to the parks. Alternatively, from a classic to a new release, the next is My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. My hold came through on this audiobook, so I'm really excited to get to this. I've been super into romance novels that are more like supernatural or paranormal. Specifically, I've been really into like witchy romance novels. Other romance books I've read would be like a Ghosts that's featured in The Dead Romantics, for example. And this one includes the vampire element. I'm not really well read in like monster or paranormal romances, but that's something I unexpectedly find myself really interested in these days. Continuing with vampire characters, the next book I want to read is by Amy McCaw. It is the sequel to Mina and the Undead. I read the first book in this trilogy in April when I was reading books that had like US Southern settings. And I really loved that book. I thought it was just so filled with 90s vibes. It is the perfect book for anybody who loves Halloween, who loves Buffy. I'm not a huge Buffy fan, but I loved all of the other references to other books and other kind of like horror movies. Like, it's such a great story, and I found it to be an awesome YA novel. And there are parts of the story that do take place in Halloween. It is more like on the cozy side because it's YA, it's a little bit more wholesome, and there's like little moments of like slice of life in there that if you love Halloween and horror, it's an enjoyable little kind of stopping point in between all of the action. Next is another book I've had probably for even longer that I've been needing to get to, and that is Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. Okay, I've been like holding off on reading it because she doesn't have too many books in her backlist. And so to have read all the books in your favorite author is really challenging because you want to know what the stories are, but also you don't want to not have anything else to read from them. So I've kind of been holding on to this one for that reason. But now that she has another book that is releasing this September, Black Sheep, it won't be the last book of hers that I have available to me to read. So it's time for me to finally get to this book that I hear so many great things about. It includes a werewolf, and like a lot of Rachel Harrison's works, it will be touching on themes that have to do with like the female experience, whether it's friendship, love, and the messiness of all of that, and just how like as we age and develop as women, just things change, and that change can be super scary. And I just love thinking about how my life is reflected through her work, and that's why I just love everything that she ever puts out. And then the last book on my cozy list that I plan to read is going to be Delicious Monsters. What I know about Delicious Monsters is that it does contain a character that can speak to ghosts. So there's like this paranormal aspect, and I think it's when she moves to a specific location, I think it might even actually be the place that maybe is haunted, all these powers and all these issues come into play. It is also YA, and I'm realizing a lot of the books that I want to read are YA, and it's a part of me right now in my life. I really enjoy young adult fiction. So now to get to some creepy books. First up is going to be All Hallows by Christopher Golden. I don't think this one is going to have an immense amount of gore or violence in it. I've heard this book be related to Trick or Treat, the very iconic Halloween movie. And then I've had some other people who said, really not giving me those vibes, like it kind of went there but didn't like fully execute. This book explicitly takes place on Halloween, and it focuses on, I think, a younger group of kids. And I think there's also like neighborhood lore and all this kind of, is it supernatural, is it not, kind of conversation conversations happening. Next is The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is also a YA horror novel. It is actually a retelling of Carrie, which I have not read and wanted to read before I got to this one, but I was like, okay, I really want to get to this one. People talk so highly about the audiobook where it has like kind of like phone call sounds, and it just seems like really great. And tons of people I know on BookTube have given this like 5 stars. The only short story collection I plan on reading this fall is going to be Haunted Nights. This is edited by Ellen Datlow, but I believe there are a wide variety of authors who contributed to this collection. And the whole theme that centers around this collection is going to be Halloween. So I believe the majority, if not all, of these short stories are going to be taking place or set around the Halloween time. Next is a new release, Silver Nitrate by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I tried to read this one in physical a few weeks ago, and I just couldn't. I think it was hard for me to get past page 10 because it is a little bit more of a slower burn, and I think I need something a little bit more fast paced. So I still have the physical book, I have the audiobook now, and so I'm thinking it will be way more successful to read this one. It involves themes of like the occult. There's a lot of LGBTQ representation. It also includes a cursed object trope too. Next book on my list is The Exorcist, written by William Peter Beatty. Finally getting to one of the 3 Unholy Trinity books of the horror genre. And really what's finally pushing me is the re-release of the Exorcist movie in theaters. So I'm actually hosting a read-along if you wanted to come join me read this, because it also has been hanging out on your TBR list for quite some time. Please do. I'll leave down below in the description a link to a Discord hosted by the amazing Michelle from Michelle's Melancholia, where we will be talking spoiler-free or full of spoilers about our reactions to this book. I'm also planning on hosting some reading sprints for this book too, where we can kind of chat a little bit about our thoughts as we're reading as well. Next is The Haunting of Ashburn House by Darcy Coates. As of filming this, I'm like right in the middle of my first Darcy Coates book, and I feel like I really do respond well to her writing. I see why people say it is like cozy horror, because as much as you want her to like kind of kick up the pacing, she does take her time, not in like a Stephen King way, but she does, you know, walk us through things in a way that I think I don't realize in the moment is really setting me up to like feel the suspense later on when we actually get the reveals. So as impatient as I might get, I think that the payoff is worth it. And this one is like that typical haunted house story, which she definitely utilizes a lot in her books. The next one here is really beloved by BookTube, and that is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This is the book where people feel like they think they know or they have no clue but where it's leading, and then they get the carpet pulled right from underneath them at the end when the reveal goes down. And maybe it's the cover, maybe it's the black cat, the haunted house, but it just screams Halloween to me. I don't think there's anything that has to do with Halloween in the story. I mean, tell me if you've read it. I think it might just be like the black cat that is like saying Halloween. Something that is very much screaming Halloween and is set in that time period, or at least in fall, is Dark Harvest, which is written by Norman Partridge. What I know about this one is that it involves a town that kind of sacrifices their kids in their community to like appease this like little pumpkin dude. I don't know what I'm talking about. And I think maybe people are like trying to challenge that or push back against it. Next, I have the one short story that I wanted to get to, and that is going to be Stephen King's Children of the Corn. I haven't watched the movie. I just know for some reason in my head, I think of fall, I think of like corn stalks, corn mazes, cornfields. And I'm trying to get through as many Stephen King short stories that kind of makes the most sense throughout the year, because it is something that I found that I enjoy rather than his full-length novels. A new release that has come out is called Infested, written by Angel Louise Colon. This one I think is middle grade. It has like some insect stuff, so that's why I put it in the creepy category. It is kind of gonna be really gross for folks that might not really be into insects. It involves a young kid who is dealing with an insect infestation at his apartment complex. And I think there's also some commentary regarding gentrification, and so it's not necessarily infestation of just insects, but maybe like something else. That just seems like the perfect book for me. It has like social commentary and then uses horror elements to kind of hit that message. It just sounds wonderful. Then we have The Haunted Forest Tour by Jeff Strand, which I do know is set on Halloween. It is on Audible and is freely available if you have that subscription, and it's going to be leaving very soon. I think it said like September 12th. I don't know too much about this premise. All I know is that it involves a creature feature element. Then I have an arc I really needed to get to. This is The Horror at Pleasant Brook by Kevin Lucia. Just judging by the cover, I feel like I know that it's gonna be really spooky, really creepy. I think what stuck with me is that it does take place on Halloween and involves some type of like creaturey element, something really supernatural. Then I'll be kicking it up a notch by reading two really wild Kindle Unlimited slashers. One is Benny Rose, the Cannibal King by HAILEY Piper, which I've never read anything by them and I've been meaning to read something from them for so long. Benny Rose and the Cannibal King is a part of the Rewind or Die series and it's set on Halloween, so I've been trying to make my way through all of them. And then Halloween Slaughter by Sergio Gomez is the other slasher I want to read. It is kind of the sequel to the first one that takes place within summer, that is Camp Slaughter. I have some issues with that book along the lines of like disability representation mostly, and also I think a lot of people were not a big fan of like the character development within that book, so I'm hoping this one is maybe a little bit more redeemable, and the Halloween setting is really what makes me curious to want to pick this one up. The last book on my creepy list is Halloween Fiend by C.V. Hunt. This one makes the rounds a lot when it comes to book recommendations for the Halloween season. The only thing I know about this one is that it takes place on Halloween, and also it involves some type of like demonic element, possibly a possession. There are also two readathons I plan on participating in when October begins. The first one is going to be Hollow Weekend, which is hosted by Books with Lexi. And then the second is going to be hosted by Bree from the Lock Booktition. It is called Black Halloweenathon. So if the books I've selected for my TBR don't necessarily work for these prompts, then I'll be able to like add more into the mix, but the whole goal is to be able to like kind of use these books in the fulfillment of their prompts. Okay, did I have enough books on my list? I don't know, but I keep reminding myself that it is for 2 months, September and October, so I try not to be super overwhelmed by all I want to get done. Like, this doesn't even include all the movies I want to watch, all the things I wanted to bake or like craft. It's a hard balance, enjoying the moment, but also like doing as much as you possibly can, because fall time is limited. And please let me know your thoughts on any of these books that I listed, if there's ones you're also planning on reading, or if you also had some strong opinions one way or another about any of the books I plan to read. If you enjoyed this video, definitely check out this Week in My Life vlog, where I read Dracula for the very first time in anticipation for the theatrical release of The Last Voyage of Demeter, and I have a lot of other fun Summerween shenanigans as I transition into fall right here. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!